Hi everyone, I hope you've had a good week. This week we're going to do a couple of things, but I think the first thing I'd like to mention to you is that we'll be finally looking at reflective writing. We've talked about this in the past, and I think you understand the importance now of being a reflective teacher. The purpose of this presentation, and it's going to be a fairly short one, is to look at structured reflective writing. What is reflection, first of all? As you'll see on the two pictures in front of you, there's a dog looking at his reflection, and his reflection doesn't change. Whereas you have the cat who's looking at his reflection is a lion. So maybe we see ourselves exactly as we are, and sometimes we might see more. Sometimes we see something else. We see something we don't want to see, and that can be frustrating at times, but it's important that we reflect. Reflection is a mental process. It's a contemplation or a long consideration. The thoughts or opinions that come to you while you're reflecting are called reflections. Unlike reflection in a mirror, it is an interpretation of what's going on between learning and thinking. Okay, we need to stress that, because reflecting is not just thinking. Okay, I mean, it's important to think, but reflection is thinking honestly and taking it a step farther. More than thinking honestly, it's about understanding what's important about the reflection, what you can learn from that. Reflective writing is evidence of reflective thinking. In an academic context, reflective thinking usually involves these things. Looking back at something. That can be an event, something that's happened to you, but it could also be an idea or an object. You can reflect on anything, but there has to be a reason to reflect. The next thing is you analyze the event or idea, thinking in depth and from different perspectives and trying to explain, often without reference to a model or theory from your subject, or with reference to a model or theory. Basically, don't worry too much about the details, but the main ideas are important. When you analyze events in the past, or in the present as well, you should think in depth, and you should look at it from all points of view. You should think carefully about the event or idea. What does it mean to you? And what does it mean to you as your ongoing process of a learner or practicing professional? As a teacher, you are a professional, you're a practitioner, as much as a doctor or a lawyer or any profession. And just as much as doctors need to reflect on how they treat their patients and how their patients are responding to treatment, you as a teacher need to think about what you do and how your students are responding, and whether you're meeting your goals. Reflective writing breaks down into three parts. And this is the model we're going to follow for your assignments for reflective writing. I mentioned before, I'll mention again, you have two reflective writing assignments. Each is worth 10%. And they'll all follow this model. Both of these assignments will follow this model. First of all, you have a description. What happened? Okay, what was the event? Or what are you examining? Then you have the next stage. This is interpretation. What is the most important, interesting, useful, relevant thing about this event, this idea, what you're examining? And then how can you explain it? Why did it happen? Perhaps there's a theory behind why it happened, which you can explain, but we're just looking at it as objectively as possible. And how is it similar to and different from other experiences, or other ideas, or other objects? Finally, the outcome. And now this is the result of the reflection. What have I learned from this? And what does this mean for my future? Now, just to illustrate this, and I'll talk in more detail in a moment about the elements of reflective writing, but just as an illustration, here's a personal experience. This is true. I think a lot of us have experiences like this, and maybe this will strike some familiar chord. I took some elementary Spanish some years ago, many years ago, before I actually lived in a Spanish-speaking country, and I was new to the subject. But one day in class, and there were, I think, maybe 25 students in the class, we're all sitting around in a sort of an L shape around the edge of the room, and the teacher was going one by one. I made a mistake. we were going through the names of the months in Spanish. And it came to me. I said, Octubre. Yeah? It should be Octubre. So, an easy mistake, we could call that transference from English to Spanish. It's very similar. These are cognates, aren't they? Octubre. But I messed up the middle vowel. I said Octubre. But that's an honest mistake, and I think one that probably I'm not the first to make. The teacher's reaction is why I'm examining this event. She immediately corrected me before I had a chance to correct myself. Because as soon as it came out of my mouth, I knew it was wrong. And I opened my mouth again to speak, and she more or less just jumped on me and said, no, it's Octubre. And the worst part was, she immediately went to the next student. And the next student was Novembre. I was embarrassed by this. Everybody's a little bit ashamed when you're making mistakes in front of the people, and as much as we tell our students not to worry when they make mistakes, we all feel some embarrassment. It's normal. But the way the teacher treated my mistake by not letting me correct myself, not giving me a chance, and by reacting so strongly, was I felt anger. I was angry with her because I felt like she didn't give me a chance, and I knew the answer. So the embarrassment turned into anger, which turned into silence. I didn't want anything else to do with this class or to do with her at that moment. I mean, of course, I got over it, I changed, but at that moment, this is how I felt. The next thing I felt was resentment against her. The teacher's reaction to my mistake? She emphasized a common error for the entire group. She moved quickly to the next student, who was Novembre, and she didn't notice my reaction. What's the outcome? I can reflect on this, and I can remember how much I didn't like that teacher, how I thought she wasn't a very good teacher. Maybe she did some other things well, but what I remember most is the things she didn't do well, and this is because of events like this, like the one I just described. As a teacher, it's important to be sensitive to students when you're doing error correction. This is what I learned, and I try not to repeat the mistakes of my teacher in this way. And trying to consistently focus on students' reactions, even if you're in a hurry or otherwise distracted. So, as much as you need to hurry, you can't forget that your students aren't necessarily on the same page as you are. They're there to learn, you're there to teach. You have your job, they have theirs, but you have to understand that as a teacher, you need to be sensitive to them. And this is one of the things that helped me realize this in my career. So, briefly, before I talk about the slide in front of you, briefly, I learned a lot about teaching from a mistake that I experienced, but I learned it through reflection. I learned it through reflecting on what happened. I learned not just to dislike that teacher, dislike that class, and dislike that moment in my life, but when that mistake happened and when the correction happened, but I actually learned to become a better teacher as a result. And this is the value of reflection. When you do your reflective assignments, there are 4 things to keep in mind. And these are: reflection is an exploration of events, not just a description of them. Okay? Genuine reflection often reveals anxieties, errors, and weaknesses, as well as strengths and successes. Okay, so you're exposing yourself a little bit, which is fine, because I think you'll find that when you reflect on something, honestly, you'll realize that other people have the same experience, and you become a good role model for them, if you will. It is normally necessary to select just the most significant parts of the event or idea which you are reflecting on. Don't tell the whole story if the whole story is not relevant. Tell the main points. It is often useful to reflect forward to the future as well as reflecting back on the past. So if I'd been keeping a reflector journal at the time that happened, that's a mistake in that Spanish class so many years ago, and I'd taken the time to reflect then, maybe I would have reflected forward and thought, okay, how is this going to affect me as a teacher when I go into the classroom as a teacher? Finally, after this presentation, you may still need some information, and that's fine. I think you should explore more. In fact, I encourage you to. There's a lot of information on reflective writing on the internet. I'd like, whatever you find out there in your explorations, that you stick to the format that I've given you. There are others, many that I don't know about, but I'm sure they're there. But please stick to the format that we were using here for your assignments. Now, most of the information for this presentation I stole, or I borrowed it, but it's not really stealing if you say where it came from, right? So there's the web page address there, and you can copy that, and you can go and explore that. It's a good place to start. Here's some information about the assignment. The date's wrong, I apologize for that, but you need to think about something that's happened in your teaching experience. Use this information in this presentation, especially regarding the elements of description, interpretation, and outcome as a guide. The length, 1.5 to 2 pages. The deadline is December 31st, 2011, not 2010. All right. I hope that was clear, useful, and I look forward to reading your assignments. If you have any questions in the meantime that you can't answer with your own exploration of the internet or by looking again at this presentation, listening to the podcast, then please feel free to get in touch. We'll be in touch. Thank you.